This video is sponsored by Soundly. Stick around to the end to see how you can get 3 months of Soundly Pro for free. Today, we'll be taking a look at sound designing this visual effects shot from a recent tutorial, Minecraft TNT Explosion. This shot was created using Blender and After Effects, and if you're interested, you can watch the whole process by following the link in the description. In this channel, we usually focus on the visuals, but audio is just as important, if not more. The visuals are always heightened so much more by the audio. It is a double-edged sword though, because if the sound is bad, then it can completely ruin everything else. So I would much rather watch something with bad visuals and good audio than good visuals and bad audio. With that said, let's jump in and take a look at the workflow I use for sound designing with Davinci Resolve and Soundly. I use Davinci Resolve for my editing and sound work, but keep in mind that Soundly works with all of these other programs as well. Alright, so here we are now in Davinci Resolve. Now, first of all, I'm gonna assume that you're not a complete beginner when it comes to Resolve, but I'm gonna go ahead and show you the layout a little bit and how we're gonna be doing the work. So up here we have the media pool, which we can toggle on and off in case we wanna make room here. For this tutorial, we're gonna be working in the edit page, but you can also jump over to the Fairlight page. Fairlight is the audio program of the Resolve, but I actually prefer doing it in the edit page, especially when just layering out sounds and doing basic audio adjustments. Here, I'll show you. If you want to toggle the mixer, you can click there, and then you have these buses and audio tracks. If you click the dots, you can switch to meters, and now you can monitor the levels. And then later, if you want, you can jump back to the Fairlight page and then do some more advanced stuff. But anyway, let's go back. Another thing we could do is maybe go to the workspace and then switch on dual screen. And now you can see this is Davinci Resolve on monitor 1, and this is on monitor 2. And then another option you can check is the full screen timeline, which makes your main monitor to be a full screen of your timeline. And then on the second monitor, you got your preview. But anyway, for the sake of the tutorial, we'll turn that off. Now, because this is a tutorial about using Soundly, then I think there is really no point in me talking about it. I'd much rather show you the process. But I did want to go over the way you can get started with a subscription, the pricing, and all that stuff. So they do have a free version, which gives you access to their free library of sound effects. Obviously not as many sound effects available as when you get the paid version, but it's pretty cool that they actually provide a free version. Then you can store 10,000 local files of your own. And then if you get the paid version, which is $15 per month if you pay monthly, or $12.5 per month if you pay yearly. And that will give you access to their entire library of sounds. Alternatively, you can access all of their pro features for 24 hours for $10. It's actually very smart of them to provide this option because some people sometimes are just working on a project, let's say once a month or something, and now they sit down and they want to finish a project within 24 hours. They can simply pay $10, get done with a project, and then move on. And under the add-ons menu on Soundly, you've got a bunch of other assets you can grab. There are free asset packs as well as paid ones. Or if you go back to the sounds menu, and let's say drag some sounds from your local library and then hit import, and then you can select them and then say right-click, add selected files to collection, and then make a new collection, and let's say Minecraft, hit OK, and you'll see those pop up down here. So essentially you can import custom sound effects from all sorts of places and then neatly organize them inside of Soundly. And you can do that by editing the metadata and inputting as much information as you want, so when you go to search, you'll have an easier time finding those sounds. Make sure to use the coupon code BROKEN to get 3 months of Soundly Pro for free. Real quick, let's go over to the settings, and there's this option here that says audio storage, which is where the audio files that you drag into Resolve get saved. And I actually like to set that to a custom destination. You can see here I've already created a folder for this project, and anytime I'm working on a new project, I will usually change the default location because I don't want those files to be created all over the place. I want them to be neatly stored in one location. That way I can copy over to the main folder of that said project. Anyway, let's go ahead and click this button over here, and you get this option that says dock mode, and then scale down Resolve like so. So both these programs fit inside of one screen. When you search for a sound, let's say ambient, whatever, and then select it and bring it in, it will first copy it over to the location you set and then import it in your media pool. So let's go ahead, create a new bin, we'll call it sounds, and we'll drag all the sounds that come into the media pool into that folder. We'll delete this one, we don't need it. Usually the first step I like to take is to go over the clip and then set markers for specific beats. So first of all, this is where the TNT spawns. So with the clip selected, we'll go over to that point in time and then hit M to set a marker, or Control M, which will bring up this marker menu, and you can immediately type in a note. So let's say TNT spawn, and then we'll move over and let's say, oh, that's where it hits the ground, and then set another marker, hit ground, and then let's say find the point in time where the explosion happens, Control M, explosion, and then see if there's anything else. You can see there's some blocks falling down here, but we won't worry about that. But there is actually a detail which I know about because I've already sound designed this shot before. There's this block that just jumps out at the end here. I'm gonna add a marker right there. Oops, do it on the clip and do piece jumps out. So we can add a specific sound right there, and you'll see just how much more you'll notice that movement of that little block because of the sound. So now, without having to look through the clip a million times, we can identify where those moments are just by looking at the markers. All right, so now let's start searching for some sounds. And usually the first thing I like to add is some ambience. And in this case, I know we're gonna add some birds chirping and stuff like that because it's a cozy day. So let's go ahead and type in ambience, or actually nature, sorry. Even add nature bird. And let's see, click and preview. That first one actually was pretty good. This third one isn't bad either. So maybe we can click and drag to select this area and then just click and drag it into the timeline. At this point, we can shrink down the preview by holding Shift and then scrolling on your mouse wheel. And then let's drag the preview up. Not a lot of real estate to work with, but bear with me. And then we'll bring it at the start. And there's this very convenient feature in Resolve where you have these handles at the start and end of your clips to give it a quick fade in and out. So we'll do a fade in first. And then at the end, we can maybe fade it out once the clip ends. And now let's go back and let's see, there's the marker for the TNT spawn. Here in our media pool now, we'll click and drag the imported sound into the sounds folder. And you can see I already have a Minecraft folder created inside there, which contains the Minecraft TNT sound effects and also this block placement sound effect, which is what we're gonna use right now. So let's click and drag it, and then we can solo it for a moment. By clicking the solo option, you can isolate the audio to just this clip. We'll use this third one. I actually want this sound to be played when it hits the ground, and then use the Minecraft TNT explosion sound effect when it gets spawned. So let's say right here. And now we'll cut it here, maybe give this a fade out, and then go over to the explosion, we'll cut it there, and then bring it all the way here. And simply just look, okay, there's the frame for the explosion, and that's where we need the explosion sound to be. And we won't worry about the levels for now. We'll come back to that later once we have the placement of each sound. Now let's go ahead and search for some risers. And for the most part, this is actually how this goes. You just listen to a bunch of sounds and eventually you find one you like. And I actually like this feature a lot where any clip you've already played turns blue. So you know, okay, I already listened to that. Let me actually delete the S at the end, so it's just riser. I'm looking for some sort of riser that's not as thin. I want it to be like a thicker, okay, actually this one. This is an impact, but the cool thing about impacts is you can select, bring them in, and you can Control R to bring up the clip speed options and hit reverse speed. And this now effectively becomes a riser. And I want to put this over just before the explosion happens. Let's say, bring it down here, maybe give it a fade out and then a fade in over here. And I don't want it to start before it spawns. Okay, so that just gives a bit of build-up or anticipation before it all goes boom. But I'm thinking that the levels are a bit too high, so you can hover over this line, which you can't quite see right now. Okay, there it is. And then click on it to tweak the levels, and then hold down Shift to get finer control. Let's say -3 dB. Also keep in mind that if you enable the inspector, you have the controls for each clip over here. So you have the audio section, and then that's the volume. It's the same as doing this here. You can do it here. Now what I'll do is duplicate this clip. So I can either Control-C to copy and then Control-V to paste. And then we'll reflip this, so reverse speed uncheck. So now it's back to being normal. And I'm doing this because I want to use it right at the impact point. Now you can see that because of the small timeline size, I'm kind of having trouble dragging these around. So a shortcut I can use is to nudge the clips up or down on the tracks, which is Shift S in my case. I'm not sure what the original shortcut is for Resolve. Shift S is just what I've set. So if you want to customize these options, you can go over to Davinci Resolve keyboard customization. And here I'll search for move clip down. You have Shift S, move clips up, Shift W. And then we'll readjust the fade ins and outs. Maybe even drag this over because it's a lot longer. Now let me try and disable that real quick, which I believe is D by default. You disable and enable clips, but I've once again customized that shortcut and set it to be Shift E. So let's do Shift E, disable, and listen. Actually, I don't want to use it just because, you know, there's already that rise, that rumble in the background, and then boom, it explodes, and I want it to kind of be clean after that. So we'll delete it, then we'll go down, let's search for debris now. And I'm looking at the names here, it says dirt and sand, so maybe rocks, okay. Okay, this last part is good, we'll click and drag that in. All right, but the thing is now that with debris, because there's a lot going on, we're gonna have to add a bunch of debris sounds to fill in all of those gaps. So we'll just keep going through these. There's more of a sandy sort of sound. Let's nudge it down, lower the volume a bit. I think it's also a good idea to color code these. What is this? This is the placement. So let's say the placement and the TNT sounds will make them the same color. I would say orange. The ambient, we'll leave it green because it's nature and nature is green. This one will be orange as well. Then we got this one, which is going to be different. Let's say yellow, because it's kind of related to the explosion, but it's not the Minecraft sound effect. So it's a different shade of orangish, yellowish, I don't know. And then for the debris, we'll just color code these all to blue. Additionally, you can rename the tracks. And usually I like to keep each sound on its own track. So let's say for this one, we'll do TNT fall, then it's TNT spawn, then it's explosion, explosion riser, and all these other ones will be debris. The debris, actually, we can put them on the same tracks as long as they don't intersect with each other and cut each other off. So let's say one will be here, one can be here. All right, let's go back to adding some more debris. Let's say rocks, rocks crashes, tumbling. So for example, this sound sounds pretty good for the small pebbles, like the small TNT pieces. So we'll click and drag those in, and then we'll nudge it down. And we'll actually push it over just so the sound starts as the pieces are starting to hit the ground in like large amounts. So I'm looking at this area in the back. Maybe we'll have it here. Make this into full screen. I do believe that the sound is going a bit longer than I want it to. At this point in time, pretty much all of the small pieces have fallen down, but we still have the sound going. So we could either maybe push it over, but I think that's still not enough. Or we could cut it here and then just fade this out a bit. Now sure, I could add some more of these. Maybe this area right here. This is what I meant before, so we could bring it over here. So we don't create a large amount of tracks. And then of course it doesn't need to go as long. See, heavy rock. Oh, this first sound is good, but I don't like that clank, whereas the other ones are a bit distorted. This one is a bit too distorted in my opinion. So let's just click and drag on this one. Actually, let's leave it down here. And then we'll tone down the level a bit. Bring it over here. And then we can drag this either over here and then fade it out. Instead, what I'm gonna do is hold Alt and click on the level line and then make 2 keyframes and drag this one down so we fade it out and then solo this track. And you can hear how it just abruptly stops. Well, this is where effects come in. So we'll pop open the effects panel and then under the audio effects, we can search for reverb and add it. You don't need to know about everything, but let's say we can switch the preset to cathedral. And you can see here visually, this represents a room. So the wider this is, the bigger this is, the more echoey it's gonna be. You can also control the reverb time here, which will make it go for longer. But let's give that a quick preview. Now, it's a bit too intense, but that's where this dry or wet output comes in. We can lower that. So it's not as intense, maybe even down to 10%. We don't want as much echo because also we're not like in an echoey room, we're outside. But we do want that initial impact sound to carry on for a bit longer. Okay, now of course this is soloed, so let's disable that and listen to it together with all the other sounds. I want to also take a look at all of these blocks that are falling down now after the explosion. So you can see the explosion happens. During this point, we start to see blocks fall back down. So we'll add some secondary falling rocks. All right, now I like this sound, but it's a bit too thin. Like the pitch is a bit too high. But let's click and drag that in and I'll show you how we can fix that. So let's solo this for a moment and preview how that sounds. You can see the sound makes it look like the blocks are a bit too light. So if we go to the inspector and then scroll down, you have this pitch option. And if we go to the left, I believe, you can see the pitch makes the sound a bit heavier. And we'll go even more, maybe -12. And let's unsolo. And then maybe cut it over here. I don't want to hear that sound. Maybe this other one. And let's say I don't want this initial explosion part. Now I'm just looking to like shift sounds from each other by a few frames so they fill in all the gaps like continuously. Okay, but we do need to shift the pitch. You can see now, like this block, that block, that block, and the black are all falling down. And then some more blocks at the end here. So let's add additional sounds to accommodate for those blocks. We'll do rocks falling. All right, so these ones right here, small 1, 2, 3. It's only sort of like one rock falling. But let's actually Control A to select the entire clip and drag it in. And then we'll just cut it right here and then start placing them to match specific rocks. So let's say boom, this one right there, we'll drag this over, boom, those 3 ones, maybe this one, just looking at the waveform, there's more going on, so we can maybe use that clip for those 3 blocks and then move forward a bit more, bring this over, and then this one hits. We'll do that. And then maybe we can solo all 4 of these. Just focus on this right side right here. Yeah, it definitely looks like each of these clips is hitting on one of those blocks. And then here we can duplicate these, maybe shift the timing so one happens before the other. So we can use the same sounds early on. So let's say this one that flies to the camera, we can kind of like predict maybe at this point in time it hits the ground. So we can just shift that over. Okay, it needs to be, I guess, on its own track. And then I'm looking at some of these other blocks that are falling down sooner. All right, that fits in there. This is looking a bit like Tetris, actually. All right. But if you listen closely, you can kind of hear some repetition, and that's something you want to avoid when doing sound design. You don't want to use the same sounds very close to each other, or at the very least try to shift the pitch a little bit, maybe slow them down or speed them up. But the thing is that these are all soloed right now. If we uncheck those and then preview them together with the other sounds, you shouldn't really be able to notice the repetitiveness. Oh my god, it sounds so good. Now, looking at the levels here, I do believe that the explosion is a bit too intense. Maybe even this one. We'll tone it down a bit, and then that's the explosion. I'm looking to keep this below 0 so it doesn't clip. And then before, I also mentioned the fact that you can slow clips down. Let me just see real quick. No, it wasn't this one. I think it was this one. Yeah, this is the one where we changed the pitch on. But what we can do is actually go Control R and then slow down the speed. So let's say 60% or something like that. And then just click and drag that. Before we move on to adding more sounds towards the end, I'm now noticing that I don't quite like the ambient sound because it has this low volume wind noise, like just noise. I don't like that, so we'll delete it and we'll do nature birds. And I think this first one was better. Yeah, I don't want to have as much wind. This first one does have wind, but it's not as intense, so drag and drop that in. I'll color it something else. Olive. And then fade it in. Oh, and of course we want to lower that down. Let's go back and search for rock. Okay, this one is cool. We got some rock movement. And I like this one as well for the explosion. So I'll drag it in. And we'll make this clip yellow. And we'll drag it up here. Maybe change the speed to like 50%. Maybe that's a bit too much. Let's say 80%. Maybe shift it over. Put it to a point in time where some of the blocks hit back down so that this initial impact on the sound kind of makes sense. Now, let me go back and find that one, the rock movement. Lower down the sound. Cut it here because the sound kind of stops there. Okay. There it is. And then we'll move this over to match it with this block moving. Okay, actually I want to use this second part of it. This block, as soon as it hits, I want it to make a very distinct sound. You see, it's like... Yeah. Okay, I do need another one. Okay, I'll just grab this. And then we'll fade it in. Now this does seem like it's really jumping out a bit too much. Let's see, let's try shifting the pitch. And lower down the sound, maybe fade it in a bit. And now these other ones are a bit too intense. Again, I'm trying to not let specific sounds take too much focus. And then we have the good old tiny, teeny, tiny block making an appearance there. So let me see. All right, this right here, this one, I think. Lighten it up a bit with the pitch. You see, when it sounds thinner, like the pitch is higher, it sounds smaller. But when the pitch is lower and it goes like woo, it sounds heavier. Now let me go full screen and give that a preview. First of all, I'm noticing a few issues. Right away, the block placement, it's a bit low. I want it to be a bit more intense. So we can hear it hitting the ground, okay. And then also this sliding rock. I want to lower down the sound a little bit more. And I actually want it to have a bit more sound on the hit back on the ground. So this is where it pops and then boom, it hits the ground. But you kind of don't hear that too much. So add some keyframes and then animate the waveform. I'm thinking I actually need to shift this over a little bit because there's an impact happening, but it's a bit further down in the sound. Okay, now the sound is a bit too much. And then there's some weird stuff going on after that point, so we'll just trim it. And what I want to do is just cut this right there and then help that cut to black with an impact. Okay, I think this one might work. But we do need a bit of a build-up over here as well. So let's see, maybe we can go back to some of the clips we had before. I'll drag this one. Cut it there, cut it there. Tone down the speed to about 75%. And then move it back in time. All right, it could use a bit more work on the details, but overall, I'm actually very happy with the clips and the placement and all that. Now, to help these sounds blend into the scene a bit more, we can go back to adding some more effects. So first of all, let's go back to the explosion. I want it to go for a bit longer, so after it explodes, it kind of echoes out like... So we can go back to the effects, add the reverb effect, and then say cathedral, tone down the wetness to about 10, because otherwise it will sound too harsh. Okay, it's still a bit too much, so under effects, click on this customize button, tone it down a bit, maybe lower the size. Let me just pump up the volume. The reverberation cuts off, and that's because the clip itself is not long enough for the reverb to fade out. And we also can't drag it because that's how long the original clip was. So to fix this problem, let's go ahead and first delete the effect. Then we'll hold Alt and duplicate it, bring it right over here, just right next to it, doesn't matter, and then we'll disable it. And then we'll select both of these clips and right click, make a new compound clip, and we'll call it TNT Explosion. And this is sort of nesting two clips into one, and we can right click, open this in the timeline. You can see it's a new timeline now, and we have two of those clips inside here. Now we can toggle this on and go back to the original timeline. And the reason we did that is so now we get a longer clip, and we can re-add the reverberation, go back to cathedral, maybe scale it down and put the dryness to 10%. Now, if I solo it once again, bring the volume back up, you can see the reverberation doesn't cut off because it has enough space to fade out. One more thing that I want to do, which is bothering me, is this rock movement. Oh my god, it's so annoying. Let me maybe lower down the speed to like 90%. Okay, and then lower down the volume because I don't want to hear it as much. It's a bit too distracting. Now, another thing we can do is add some reverb to all of these debris sounds as well. That would be a nightmare if we were to do it on every single one individually. And also we couldn't actually get proper results because these clips are all short and the reverb would cut off just as before. So again, we could use the compound clip trick, select all of them. And in fact, I want to copy them, then right click new compound clip and we'll do debris. And then shift click on the auto track selector and then click just this 7th one. So we can Control V to paste and then move these over. The leftmost clip starts right there at the beginning of the compound clip. And the reason I want to do this is because I want to keep these as backup. So let's disable those. And in fact, we can go into the timeline and let's just duplicate one of these layers. Doesn't matter which one. Move it to the side and then disable it, just so we can increase the length of this. Now add the reverb, we'll solo it. Oh my god, that's too much. Just like 10%, just a little bit, but it adds a bit of echo to it, so the debris kind of goes a bit longer instead of just being like, kind of like goes. You get what I mean. All right, so let me also show you real quick. We can go back to the mixer and here you can click and drag to see all of your tracks. And right now, because we have a bunch of tracks here, we're seeing all of them, but we can look over here. Let's see, this is track 6 and then click and drag this just so we get to see only up until the 6th track. And the reason I'm showing you this is just so you know you can tweak the levels of each track from this mixer as well. And in fact, if you go over to the Fairlight tab, you can also see that you have the option of effects, EQ, dynamics, all that stuff. And now let's say you want to tone down the volume of your ambient sound or any other sound, and you have like a bunch of keyframes and you're playing around with the volume. You go like that, you go like that. And now instead of having to individually tweak all of these points back up to like a reasonable level, you can instead globally control all of those with this slider. So it's like a secondary control. All right, so let's give that one last preview. Alright, so hopefully you've seen just how fun sound designing can be. Personally, I love the audio side of things just as much as doing visual effects or motion design. I plan on doing more audio related videos on this channel for different kinds of projects, so maybe we can take a look at other things we can do with audio. Either way, let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions. Again, if you missed the tutorial on how to do visual effects using Blender and After Effects, then you can check it out through the link in the description. I hope you learned something new from this video, and if you did, then make sure to explode that like button. And again, don't forget to use the coupon code BROKEN to get 3 months of Soundly Pro for free. Thanks for watching and being patient all the way through, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.